Now, I mentioned to you that the New York Times, and you probably hear this all over the news because it's so incestuous, has a story out now. If you go on their website, they're very clever, they think. They keep having a picture of his father and then superimposing Donald Trump on his father's face. Because the New York Times, if it's anything, it's objective. Not. And then the headline of the piece is, Trump engaged in suspect tax schemes as he reaped riches from his father. Now, the Democrats have been saying that they're going to get a hold of Trump's taxes should they take over the House. And you can see how they work hand in glove with the media. And so, what is a president to do? What is a person like Donald Trump to do with an article like this that goes on and on and on, and you can't win? You can't win. Because what are you going to do? Put out a 30,000-word a piece denying it all? And then they come back and hit you again? I told you this was a coup, and that's exactly what it is. But let's the subheadline, the president has long sold himself. Now, see, this is a news story. The president has long sold himself as a self-made billionaire. But a Times investigation found that he received at least $413 million in today's dollars from his father's real estate empire, much of it through tax dodges in the 1990s. I'm surprised he didn't go back to his high school years. Now, the New York Times is located in New York City, ladies and gentlemen. Donald Trump's empire is located in New York City. Donald Trump's been there a long time. He's well known in New York City. You may have seen his names on a few buildings, as a matter of fact. Probably saw him on TV for a period of time. But the New York Times is writing this now. Really? President Trump participated in dubious tax schemes during the 1990s, including instances of outright fraud that greatly increased the fortune he received from his parents, an investigation by the New York Times has found. Mr. Trump won the presidency proclaiming himself a self-made billionaire, and he has long insisted that his father, the legendary New York City builder Fred C. Trump, provided almost no financial help. But the Times investigation, based on a vast trove of confidential tax returns and financial records, reveals that Mr. Trump received the equivalent today of at least $413 million from his father's real estate empire, starting when he was a toddler and continuing to this day. Now, you got to stop and ask yourself, apart from the slings and arrows here, how the hell did they get his confidential tax information? He's not a public corporation. Where did this come from? Did it come from the U.S. Attorney's Office? Did it come from the Attorney General of New York's office? Did it come from the local DA? All of whom, or some of whom, have been demanding, apparently, documents from Trump World? It doesn't get any worse than this, folks. It surely does not. Much of this money came to Trump because he helped his parents dodge taxes. That's at least the fourth time they've used dodge taxes in this, and I'm only on the, third paragraph. He and his siblings set up a second-time sham, corporation to disguise millions of dollars in gifts from their parents, records and interviews show. Records indicate Mr. Trump helped his father take improper tax deduction worth millions more. He also helped formulate a strategy to undervalue his parents' real estate holdings by hundreds of millions of dollars on tax returns, sharply reducing the tax bill when those properties were transferred to him and his siblings. Listen to this. These maneuvers met with little resistance from the Internal Revenue Service, the Times found. Little resistance from the Internal Revenue. In other words, do you think for 2 seconds if the IRS thought that any of this was illegal, that they wouldn't be resisting it? The president's parents, Fred and Mary Trump, transferred well over $1 billion in wealth to their children, which could have produced a tax bill of at least $550 million under the 55% tax rate then imposed on gifts and inheritances. Now, that is absurd. You have all kinds of deductions over a period of time. You have what's called adjusted gross income. So you don't just apply the 55% tax rate. But the Trumps paid a total of $52.2 million, or about 5%, tax records show. President declined repeated requests over several weeks to comment for this article, but a lawyer for Mr. Trump, Charles Harder, provided a written statement on Monday, one day after the Times sent a detailed description of its findings. The New York Times allegations of fraud and tax evasion are 100% false and highly defamatory, Mr. Harder said. There was no fraud or tax evasion by anyone. The facts upon which the Times bases its false allegations are extremely inaccurate. So somebody, it looks like, not reading further because I don't care to, committed a crime. Or some entities or individuals, group of them, committed a crime by releasing somebody's confidential tax information. You know, this really is kind of Stalinist stuff. It's really grotesque. You have your health records, they have your financial records. You have to give them under penalty of perjury, or they'll come after you. You give them in, and then they're leaked. The IRS didn't claim anything. Oh, the IRS just turned a blind eye, don't you know, ladies and gentlemen, because we all know Donald Trump controlled the IRS in the 1990s. How ridiculous. And notice the New York Times never produces something like this on the Clinton Foundation and Library. Right? On the nuclear deal. 20% of the uranium. The speeches and all the rest. No, don't bother the Clintons. No way. Harder sought to distance Mr. Trump from the tax strategies used by his family, saying the president had delegated those tasks to relatives and tax professionals. Well, of course he did. You're not distancing yourself. It's the same exact way the family that owns the New York Times handles it. They don't do their own taxes. President Trump had virtually no involvement whatsoever with these matters, he said. The affairs were handled by other Trump family members who were not experts themselves and therefore relied entirely upon the aforementioned licensed professionals to ensure full compliance with the law. Why doesn't the New York Times accept that point? Even as they go on, they can't accept that point? That Trump didn't do his own taxes? And that he relied on professionals and others? The president's brother, Robert Trump, issued a statement on behalf of the Trump family. Our dear father, Fred Trump, passed away in June 1999. Our beloved mother, Mary Ann Trump, passed away in August 2000. All appropriate gift and estate tax returns were filed, and the required taxes were paid. Our father's estate was closed in 2001 by both the IRS and the New York State tax authorities, and our mother's estate was closed in 2004. Our family has no other comment on these matters that happened some 20 years ago and would appreciate your respecting the privacy of our deceased parents. May God rest their souls. Jeez, I tell you. But the IRS looked the other way, ladies and gentlemen. There's no explanation for that. The IRS didn't look the other way. But look at these hit-and-run things. I see Jim Jordan here. Remember how they tried to destroy Jim Jordan? Whatever happened to that? They hammered him for about a month and then walked away. Hammered him for about a month and then walked away. No even allegation that he was involved in anything untoward. They claim he looked the other way when boys were being molested by whomever there. And he said, I don't even know what they're talking about. Didn't matter. He wanted to be speaker, and they didn't want him to be speaker. Trump's president. They don't want him to be president. Now you watch the Democrats wave this article around. You see, we need the tax returns. And then watch some of these wimps on cable TV who you think are on your side. Yes, I think they should release them just to be careful. I mean, the president, he has nothing to hide, of course. This is how it's done. This is how you destroy people. I'll be right back. Well, I read most of the New York Times article during the break. Yes, I read very quickly. And just trashing the president, trashing his family, trashing his father. Just really quite repulsive. Then they cherry-picked their commentators like some law professor who was an expert on gift taxes and so forth. Well, what exactly did they give the law professor to look at? So this is all intended to generate demands or to support the demands by Democrats on Capitol Hill for the president's tax returns, going back 20 years, 30 years, whatever's necessary. They are really seeking to destroy anyone who disagrees with them, anyone who wins an election with whom they disagree, anybody who might go on the Supreme Court with whom they disagree. This is all-out political warfare now, ladies and gentlemen. It is all-out political warfare. There's no question in my mind about this. And the things that some of these media types say on TV really are, I'm concerned, spurring violent behavior and will spur more violent behavior. These politicians being chased into restaurants. You know, I find certain politicians on Capitol Hill contemptible. I would never go into a restaurant and confront them or disrupt their dinner, anything of the kind. And neither would you. It's a totally different mindset. I wouldn't go to a protest with a sock full of pennies or coins or rocks or whatever for the purpose of slamming somebody in the back of the head. Would you? I think that what the left has reaped is upon us. I really believe that. And we're always on defense. They're never on defense.